Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Cyberman Show. Today, I'm going to talk about a recently read report from Recorded Future. It's a 2023 annual report on threat intelligence. Um, I have no association with Recorded Future, and the reason I read and share these reports is to understand what's happening out there, how are threat actors moving, and using this knowledge, we can adapt, learn, and implement some of the things that are new. So, the purpose of this report is to understand adversaries' work, their targets, methods, and attacks. It also has predictions for 2024. And by the way, this report calls 2023 as the year of the enterprise software hack for the reasons that I'm going to discuss later. The report covers things like tech trends, its findings on cyber threat intelligence, evolution of cyber threats, third party threats, extortion trends, as well as predictions. So let's get started. In terms of the tech trends, the report notices that there's an increased demand for services like cloud computing and generative AI, which is driving vendors to seek increased computing power. Also, that most organizations report deploying applications on at least two infrastructure as a service platforms, and almost half uh, follow a cloud first strategy for deploying new applications in their enterprises. Also, there is an increased number of offerings from the passwordless authentication use case. A common method is now Magic Link. So, people who don't know about Magic Link, essentially it's a one-time use link sent to the customer during the authentication process. And after, so what happens is after you enter your username, you will get a one-time link, essentially URL on which once you click, you will be authenticated to the application. So this is how Magic Links work. Now, the report also mentions that there is definitely a cyber impact related to geopolitical events like Russia and Ukraine conflict and as Israel and Hamas war. Okay. Also, there is a either an update in cybersecurity regulations or new changes are proposed uh, in specific industries in across various countries. So it starts with USA, where the TSA, Transportation Security Administration, updates and renews cybersecurity requirements for pipeline owners and operators. HHS, which is Department of Health and Human Services, proposed new security requirements for hospitals through HIPAA, Medicaid, and Medicare, mostly because of noticeable incidents all across 2021, 2022, 2023, and in the last uh, quarter, specifically with the Change Healthcare breach. Um, Also, SEC regulations were introduced for entities, uh, making it mandatory to report breach within 4 business days. Also, in Singapore, the Singapore security law has proposed amendments to add more requirements for critical infrastructure industries while also expanding its scope to regulate non CII industries. In Brazil, country's national telecommunications agency Anatel has updated the national regulations that tightened an existing minimum security requirements for covered entities by adding specific requirements, including password requirements and software vulnerability updates. So every country is doing that. I've noticed in last 2 years, USA especially has done great amount of work on the federal as well as state side to improve cybersecurity resiliency as well as response for various categories of incidents, at least on the critical infrastructure side. Okay. Uh, Now let's move on to the cyber threat intelligence side. So this section essentially covered uh, two things. One is around how the attack surface is increasing because enterprises are hyper connected, people are working from home, there's increased adoption of cloud, and all this is leading to mass exploitation of vulnerabilities. Okay. So the report mentions that threat groups successfully exploited several vulnerabilities at scale in third-party tools like Go Anywhere, Move It, Citrix Nextscaler device to inflict widespread damage on thousands of organizations. Now, the most notable instances of mass exploitation in 2023 was carried out by Clop ransomware on two third-party managed file transfer services, Go Anywhere, as well as Postgres Software's Move It. Specifically on Move It, Clop made around $100 million in profit, targeted 2,750 organizations and 94 million individuals. Also, that ransomware groups accounted for the majority of reported attacks, including prominent groups like Logbit Gang, Medusa, and Elfv. Now, the common characteristics in each of these mass vulnerability exploitation is that these vulnerabilities were discoverable via public scans of internet-facing infrastructure, which made it very easy for threat actors to discover the vulnerability as well as exploit. Also, the vulnerabilities were exploited before they were publicly known. Uh, they are known as 0 days and patched, and they continue to be widely exploited after being disclosed as enterprises struggle to patch them. And it's very common. Patches are available, enterprises are slow to patch the software, and hence threat actors are able to exploit these. Also, uh, that specific technology product types were repeatedly exploited. Uh, Obvious victims would be most commonly used platforms like Microsoft, Google, Apple, and Cisco because of their higher market share, and also that there is a 29 to 90% increase in the number of vulnerabilities exploited in attacks in the enterprise software compared to uh, 2022 and 2023. So in 2023, there were more exploitation in the enterprise software. So if you look at 2023, operating system was most targeted, followed by network infrastructure, and then enterprise software. Okay, all these three categories led to around 67% of the exploitation. Now, if you look at the instances of exploitation in details, file transfer software and backup softwares were both targeted. So I mentioned Clop Gang. So Clop targeted Move It software as well as Go Anywhere secure managed file transfer service, and also there were attacks on Progress Software's WSFTP server, another one on IBM's Aspera Fastpaks file sharing solution. So they were the first choice of targets by various ransomware groups, considering that these file share services or file transfer platforms, they host high volumes of sensitive data, and they offer the potential to compromise organizations at scale. Also, there was an attack on backup software, as I said earlier. UNC 4466, a moniker for a threat actor, targeted Veritas's backup exec, a data recovery solution for small and medium businesses. And by the way, this vulnerability was also patched earlier. VM's backup and replication software was also targeted by a ransomware group called Cuba. Now, if you move on to the next category, which is how the cyber threats are evolving, is obviously you want to wonder about what's happening at the generative AI side. So the report mentions that their researchers have observed that threat actors are using AI-powered chatbots to craft convincing phishing emails, support scam operations, analyze e-commerce merchants' anti-fraud systems to facilitate payment fraud, and also more sensationalized fears such as AI autonomously developing and executing complex cyber attack strategies are largely speculative in nature and have not been observed in the wild. Now, an emerging concern has been the potential misuse of uncensored LLMs. So, for people who are not familiar with the difference between a censored and versus an uncensored LLM, the difference is in regular LLM like Gemini, Bard, ChatGPT. If you search for specific content, it might not be displayed, it could be blocked. Whereas in uncensored LLMs, there is no such restriction. Okay. Now, most of these LLMs, which are on the malicious side, they advertise the ability to produce malware, create phishing emails, and construct ready-to-use scam sites. They have not been there has not been any definitive studies on the real world implication or impact of these AI created malware, phishing, or scam sites. By the way, on other note, I'm looking at some of the research papers that have come out in the last few months at least last few months, uh, where researchers are talking about LLM specific attacks. And once I'm ready, I'll share my learnings about that. Okay? And the report also mentions that although uh, it is still getting developed, people are talking about it. Cyber criminals will still take time to develop that skill because it's a complicated skill. They've recently warmed up to the cloud-based attack, and they will also take time to learn LLMs and how AI or generative AI works, and then use those in the cyber side. Now, moving on to third-party threats. So software supply chain attack remain prevalent and are always evolving. So there is a 11.8% increase when you compare 2022 to 2023 in the reported software supply chain attacks. PyPy and NPM package managers retained the top spots as the most frequently targeted technologies by cyber criminals, suggesting that there is a focus on development stage of the software supply uh, chain cycle to deploy information stealers. Also, software products by 3CX, JetBrains, and Cyberlink were targeted by threat actors to deploy malware. 2023 also saw of the first instance of a double software supply chain compromise. So, if you guys remember 3CX, they were first compromised by North Korea's Lazarus Group using a Trojanide installer of Xtrader trading platform hosted on the trading technologies website. And then once the threat actor was able to get into 3CX, they compromised the 3CX build environment and infected 3CX with malware that led to compromise of end users using the 3CX software. So it is still evolving. This was the first instance. By the way, one of the known techniques that's used in software supply chain attack is impersonating legitimate packages. Example, if you're using a file called or a library called Node 0, no, somebody can upload a malicious packet with the same name called Node O, essentially a typo. And if a developer makes a typo mistake, that malicious package will be imported. Also, report mentions that the criminals are targeting BPO organizations to facilitate social engineering. People who are not familiar with BPOs, these are essentially outsourcing specific organizations. So, example, a company into shoe manufacturing might want to outsource the entire payroll or accounting to a different company like a BPO, and then the threat actors can attack a BPO to get into the shoe manufacturer. Also, trusted tool abuse has increased through legitimate internet services. So, specific malware families have gradually incorporated LIS or legitimate infrastructure in their in recent years, and it has become common for most more recent commodity information stealers and malicious PyPy packages to abuse LIS, especially for city communications. Uh, Roughly 25% of over 400 malware families currently abuse LIS in some way as part of their C2 infrastructure. Also, cloud storage platform were the LIS most commonly abused, followed by messaging for applications like Discord, Telegram, and also GitHub. By the way, Russian threat actor abused the US business automation service Notion for its command and control activity. Moving on to extortion trends. So the report mentioned that the offensive tooling is increasingly targeting Linux and Mac OS systems. Uh, when you compare 2022 to 2023 data, there is definitely a higher focus on both Mac OS and Linux. On Mac OS side, at least 21 new malware families or variants surfaced in campaigns targeting Mac OS. Also on Linux platforms, a report suggested that there is a 62% increase in ransomware detection on Linux systems when comparing the first half of 2022 to the first half of 2023, and that's a massive jump. Threat actors are transitioning to developing malware in programming languages that are compatible with multiple operating systems such as Rust, and that's likely contributing factor to increase targeting of both Linux and Mac OS. Also, some ransomware that started with Windows support later added support for Linux, Unix, or ESXi. And ransomware operation called No Escape started with support for Windows and added Linux later. Or sorry, Linux was also supported from the beginning. Also, there is an increased usage of valid accounts for initial access, and phishing tactics are getting involved. So, in 2022, there were 386 incidents noted for using valid accounts, and in 2023, that number was 470. Okay, uh, so there is in 2023 there was a notable rise of 135% in the overall number of harvested credentials, and a 166% increase in the credentials associated with cookies. Uh, in terms of phishing evolution, uh, the phishing attacks have started to use newer file formats like HTML files, compiled HTML help, CHM files, or LLNK files. Also, use of zip and RAR archive formats that are password protected, and this helps them to bypass some of the email security solutions and land into victims' mailbox. Also, security controls on email technology has also prompted threat actors to find alternative means to distribute malware or redirect victims to phishing websites such as QR code phishing, known as quishing in short, also SMS phishing, known as smishing in short, and corporate messaging applications. Also, that information operations are getting very active. In 2023, there were at least two major networks that were tagged by companies like Google, Meta, and TikTok, and they were associated with Russia and China. So specifically to Russia, a network called Doppelganger was seen as the most persistent covert influence networks that was operating, and the operation involved the use of TikTok accounts attempting to highlight corruption in the Ukrainian government and fake celebrity quotes to erode domestic support for Ukraine in Europe and the US. There were at least 2,000 accounts that were tagged in December 2023 associated with this operation. And by the way, this operation was observed using AI-generated text on a website targeting US politics. Specifically to China, an operation called Spamouflage was tagged, and its objective was to influence election campaigns in Hong Kong's local election in December 2023 and Taiwan's presidential elections in Jan 2023. Now, both these operations have illustrated a strong intent in manipulating audience in connection with their respective government, geopolitical objectives, and also will most certainly include influencing the outcome of 2024 US elections. Now, 2024 is the year of elections in many countries across the globe, and I'm sure these nations, at least some of these nations, will use information operations to target or influence these elections. In the last section, let's talk about predictions. So, the report predicts that in terms of vulnerabilities, at least one ransomware group will carry out a successful compromise of hundreds of targets while exploiting vulnerabilities in enterprise third-party file transfer service in 2024. So they are predicting a repeat of what happened in 2023 on MoveIt, WSFTP, and other services. Third-party threats are going to increase, and NPM will highly likely to continue to attract the most targeted, to be most targeted due to ubiquity and volume of new packages that are published. Also, extortion groups will increasingly target technology supporting and securing hybrid and remote networks, especially cloud-based data storage, MFA solutions, VPNs, and that the majority of ransomware attacks will involve attacks against assets. Hacktivism will rise, which will involve targeting of Western entities aligned with NATO, and European Union will likely continue, while focus on entities supporting Israel will also increase. initial access methods. So definitely increase focus on stealing credentials and identities using techniques like password spraying and credential stuffing. So for people who don't know about these two techniques, password spraying is a type of brute force attack which involves a malicious actor attempting to use the same password on multiple accounts before moving on to try another one. Whereas credential stuffing is an attack in which credentials obtained from a data breach on one service are used to attempt to log into another unrelated service. Information operations, uh, the report predicts that this is a year of high profile and numerous election worldwide, and the report anticipates that the public's awareness of deepfakes and disinformation operation will be more disruptive than the aim or activity of adversary driven campaigns, particularly in high polarized electorates such as the US. So yeah, that was it. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, especially on how AI is moving, and also third-party threats, specifically software supply chain. Uh, the double software supply chain attack was very interesting for me. Increasing use of valid account for access, concept of magic links. I have used this kind of login in the past, but I was not aware of this particular term. So lesson learned, new thing learned. Also, use of legitimate internet has been there for number of years now, but as more commonly used services are getting noticed or getting targeted, that's definitely a good thing to learn. With that, thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Keep sharing, keep liking. Again, I'm thankful to Recorded Future for sharing this content. I'll see you next time.